Hello and welcome back to the short series course where we are building a drag and drop game with react-beautiful-dnd and ContextAPI. This is the third part, but the second part of the third part, right? And this is because we're already spending time in the previous video and we need to split this into another part. So this part 3 is in 2 phases. Alright, so this phase we are going to complete what we want to do, or what we set out to do in the previous phase of the same part. Alright, now we've been able to style our tasks and be able to create them as components, and we have a seed data. Alright, so what we want to do is to create a context API to manage the state and also, add the drag and drop functionalities. Okay, for us to be able to do that, what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be closing this up, and I will go to localhost 3000. That's the port I'm running this React application right now. All right, for us to do anything with context API, there are things we need to really understand, and there's a way we have to set this up. So in order to do that, the first things is I'm going to be creating some folders. So inside the source folder, I'll create a new folder. I'll call it context, right? And inside the context folder, I'm going to create a types.tsx file. Now this types.tsx is different from the one we created the other time. The one we created the other time comprises of interfaces, basically our defined types, our own defined types, right? But this time around we are creating another types.tsx file, which is going to comprise of how we manage the state for our context API in React. Alright, so what I want to do here is I just want to say export constant set seed equals to set seed. Now this is the way we are going to manage our context API, right? These are the constants, these are the variables we are going to use. So I'm going to do set underscore loading, just in case we need this. Set loading. Alright, so since we have this, now we can go ahead in the same context folder. We can create a new folder and we can call it task. Alright, within the task folder, what we want to do is we want to create 3 major files, right? These 3 files are important. This is the way I structure context API in React. So we are going to create 3 files. We are going to create a file called the task context, right, .tsx, right? We are going to create the we're going to, in the same folder, we are going to create the task reducer.tsx, and then lastly we are going to create the task state.tsx. Alright, each of these files has their own importance. So we are going to start with the task context. Alright, so what are we going to put inside the task context? This is what we want to put. We're just going to do import from React. We're going to import create context, right, from React, and then we're going to do something like this. We're going to say constant task, this is capital letter, task context equal to create context, and then we are going to say this is going to be any, that's the data type, and then it's going to be empty object right here, and then we're going to say export default task context. Alright, so with this we are done with this file. We don't come back to this file to do anything more again. Alright, so the next one we want to deal with is the task state, which is a bit it's a bit complex. All right, but it's not that complex. Okay, so in the task state, we're going to be importing React from React. I'm going to destructure use reducer here, and then we are going to be also we're going to be importing our task context and task reducer. So import /task context, so it's going to be task context, and then import /task reducer, and that's going to be task reducer. Okay, now with this there's going to be an error, so I'm just going to say let's do constant reducer equals 7. Let's export default reducer here. Okay, so we are not going to have an error, that's why, but that's not what we're going to put in that file. All right, so with that done, the next thing I want to do here is to import something like this from types. I want to import set seed. It's very important. This is where we're going to be using it. Then I'm going to create a functional, something like a functional component here. So I'm going to do constant task state equals props any, and then I'm going to create it like a functional component. So what do we want to do here? What we want to do here is quite simple. We are going to create an initial state. So we're going to say constant initial state. This is our initial state. We need a particular variable called seed, and this seed is going to be a particular collection of data. Remember, inside our helpers page or helpers folder, we've created a file called seed data. All right, so we're going to bring in seed data into our task state here. So import. So we're going to go right into our component and helpers, and then we're going to do seed data. So this will be seed data. All right, so we want to equate this seed variable right here to seed data by default. Okay, and that is that about about that. All right, so with that done, there's nothing else we need here. Let's go downward, and then we're going to say constant state. We're going to do dispatch here, right? This is what we use to activate our reducer. So we're going to do use reducer, and that's going to be task reducer initial states. That's what we're going to be doing here. All right, this is giving an error because it's expecting like a function instead, but no worries. Let's go. Let's move on. Now what we want to do basically is we want to do a return statement here. We want to do a return statement and return. We're going to be returning task context dot provider, right? And within this we're going to do props dot children, yeah. All right, and then here we're going to be putting our initial state. So we're going to say value, and then we're going to say seed is state dot seed. All right, and then what else do we have? We're going to have a function called set seed. Okay, we're going to have a function called set seed, so we can as well create the function right here. So constant set seed is equal to data, and let's just say any for now. And what we're going to do here is we're going to dispatch. I'm going to call dispatch, and it's going to be an object. We're going to put type set seed. Of course, this is where the types we created, this is where it's coming in. So we're going to do payload. Payload is the data that is coming. All right, this thing is not working as it should because we are having some issue with our reducer, right? So let's quickly go into our reducer file and begin to write our reducer functionalities. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to import from my types, from the context types, don't forget. So set seed. Then after that, what I want to do is I want to say constant reducer equals, then I'm going to be passing in two information: the state, which is any, the action, which is any. All right. Then I'm going to be exporting export default reducer here. Okay, and then that should do the deal for us. Now we're going to use the switch statement here. So switch action dot type. Now I'm going to explain how this works later when we are done. This is how we are setting up our context API in React. So case set seed. What do we want to do at case set seed? Right, we want to return so we're going to spread out our state, and then we're going to assign the payload. So we're going to say action dot payload, right? And then that's all we want to do here. All right, that's all we want to do here. Of course, we can grow this file and make it more even robust and really long, right? Now what happens here? What happens is this. Now with this start state, we are using this state to represent our initial state right here. All right, and this state is going to be managed by our reducer. So for every variable that is in our initial state, our reducer knows that variable, okay, because we are managing our state using the reducer right here. And every time we call a function in our state, what we are doing is we are going to be sending some information to our reducer, and our reducer will be assigning that information to the proper variable existing in our initial state, right? That's how they connect. All right, and for us to be able to make available all these functions and all these variables throughout our React application, we have to put it in our context provider this way, right? And there's two last things we need to do. We need to do two things lastly. So the first thing is to add our state to our router, right? Our React router. So I'm going to bring in the state. This is very important for every context you set up. Now this is a particular context, right? For every context you set up with its state and reducer, right, you must bring the state into your React router, your React app router, right? So I'm going to be doing okay, within context task state. I'm going to be in task state here. All right, so with that done, what is it saying? Okay, it does not have oh sorry, I'm going to do export default task state. Okay, export default task state, so the error goes away, and then just after router above route, I'm going to be putting task state. So all your context API state should come after your router. That's very important. That hierarchy is very important. All right, so with that done, that's the first step of making our context API available throughout our React application. Now the second step is to create an interface for our context. So export interface I task context, right? Then the only variable we have here is just string, and it is an array of and so it's going to have something like this. There's going to be, remember how our seed data looks like. Our seed data it's an object, and you have a list of tasks, a list of column, and then a list of order. All right, so list of tasks is going to be tasks is going to be an array of I task. Okay, columns is going to be an array of I column, right? And then we are going to have order. That's going to be an array of string, basically. All right, so this is the only variable that will be existing in our task context interface, and that is corresponding to the variable that is existing in our initial state, in our task state right here. All right, so with that done, I think we are almost done here. So what else do we need to do? Let's create another interface here. Let's say export interface iSeed data, which is going to be this. All right, so if we create it this way, then we can remove this and put iSeed data. All right, I think that makes a lot of sense. So we can use this interface somewhere else. For example, in our task state here, for this function setSeed, where we can say we are expecting iSeed data for this to work. Okay, right? We've set up our context, and that makes a lot of sense. Now if I go to my browser and reload this browser, if I open my developer tools, don't forget Command Option I on Mac, or Control Alt I on Windows, right? Or the easiest way is to go to the top right corner here, these three dots, click it, go to More Tools, and click on Developer Tools. All right, it's because I've opened it before, that's why it's closing. If I go back here and open it again, it's going to open up. Now there's a particular React Dev extension that you have to install on your Chrome browser, right? So you can say React Dev Chrome extension, right? So you can say React Developer Tools Chrome extension, right? I've already installed this on my Chrome. You should search for it and add it to your Chrome, because that way you're going to be able to have these two tabs on your developer tools, and that will help you to inspect your React context API and everything about your React app. You're going to be able to inspect it in your Chrome browser. All right, so with that done, now this particular component is not working on this browser. This extension is not working well on this browser very well, but so if it brings a white interface, just go to the profiler and come back to the component. Now if you look at the hierarchy of the components that are here, you will see task states. This task state is appearing here because we've added tasks state to our React application. We've added it to the router in our React application. That's why it can show here. If you don't add it, number one, you will not be able to have your context API available throughout your React application, and at the same time you will not have it shown up here. So it is important that you have this. It is also important that in your task state you return this. It's very important. All right, so when I click on this, I'm going to expand this part right here. You can see that the only thing we have here is the seed variable that we created. That's initial. That's our initial variable in our initial state. All right, then you can see that it already has a list of tasks, a list of columns, right, and a list of order, right? That's because when we are creating our initial state, we are initiating the data, this seed variable here. We are equating it to our seed data that we've already created. This is just a JavaScript object, a JSON object that we created on our own. So ideally what you want to do here is, if you are working with a database, you want to also you just want to pull your data from database and equate it just like we did here. Equate it here, and automatically every time you run your app, it will always have the seed with its data. Now with this available, it is very easy for us to now begin to render everything on our web page. So how do we do that? Let's go back to our components, pages, and home. Right, the first thing we have to do is to bring in our task context. All right, so bring in our task context. It's right here, task context from this and that. Now remember, we are destructuring the use context from React, so we can say constant task context equals use context. Now we want to provide a defined type, which is going to be our high task context, that interface we created the other time. And then this is going to be task context, the import we made here. Right, now this way it is easy for us to do something like task context dot seed. Right, we can access any variable within the interface. Now there's one more thing we need to add here. We need to add the function set seed. Right, the data is expecting is iSeed data, and then is returning void. Right, this is very important for us to do. Okay, so from doing this, by default our task context already have data, remember. All right, so I can console log task context dot seed here. Right, I can log task context dot seed. If I open my console right here and I reload this page, you'll see that the task will be logged, right, by default. So you can see something like the columns, the order, the tasks. Okay, now just to show you that the data would be there by default. All right, now what we need to do is to render all of our columns. By default we should kind of render all of our columns. Okay, so in doing that, what we are going to do is we are going to check if our seed data has a list of columns. All right, so we're going to do task context dot seed dot length. Task context dot seed and task context dot seed dot columns dot length. If the length is greater than 0, that is, if we have columns present, then we should have task context dot seed dot columns dot map. So we want to add map, and then this is going to be column. We're going to have index here, and then we're going to create a map function here, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to filter all the tasks out, right? Or the tasks already, the columns already have the tasks, So let me remove this right here. Let's check again. Go to our components right here. I'm just going to switch, and then all the columns have their own tasks, right? So we have task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, and so on, right? Now I want to make a quick change here. Let's go to our interface. For the interface, for the column interface, it's supposed to be an array of string rather than array of rather than array of I tasks. The reason why is that the way we structure our data is that each column will have array of string as a task, right? So we're only putting the task ID here. All right, so with that done, there's going to be some issue here, but don't worry about it. Now that we want to render something on our task, we want to render our tasks dynamically, there should be no problem with that. Okay, so there's a complaint here. So it's saying task. Okay, so what we're going to do here is very simple. So before we return, we're going to say we're going to do something like this. We're going to say constant task. So what we're going to do here is because this is a string, it doesn't necessarily process all of this this particular this particular properties. Okay, so let's go back to our interface. Let's make it iTask here. I think that will make a lot of sense for us. And the only manipulation we'll have to do right here is to come here, right? Let's come here and then let's do constant. Even though we have array of string here, it doesn't matter. What we can do is we can do we can say okay, constant tasks equals, then we're going to do task context dot seed dot tasks dot filter, right? Remember, all tasks in our seed data have a column they belong to, okay, which is going to be very easy for us. So we're going to say filter all the tasks where each task column is equal to the column ID. All right, with that being the case, then let's return like a fragment here. All right, but not a fragment. Let's return our column. All right, column this. So a column, first we're going to add the key, which is going to be the column ID dot ID here. Then we're going to add the title, right, which is going to be the column title. We're going to add tasks, which is going to be the tasks, the task we filter out from here. So it's still saying property ID is missing. All right, so we're going to put ID here. We're going to say column dot ID. All right, so with that done, it's going to be very easy for us to have something like this in our in our platform. On our web page. You can see that the title of each column is not displayed right here. That's because our seed data is functioning in a different way. So what we want to do here is let's just change the name here under columns. Let's change name here to title. All right, let's change name to title, and I think that will solve the issue for us. I think tasks, if we look at the interface, column as title, task as names. All right, so let's reload this page, and we have our title, the title of each column being displayed. All right, so with that done, we've been able to dynamically render all our columns, and then within our columns we've been able to dynamically render all the tasks for that column. So what we are doing here is by the time we're rendering all our columns, we are filtering out all tasks that belong to a particular column, and then we are passing the tasks into the the column component. All right, now it's time for us to start adding the drag and drop functionality. So how do we do that? Let's get back to our import right here. Remember, we've imported drag drop context, draggable and droppable, right? And we are using our droppable strict. Actually, we are not going to be using droppable here, but let's move on. First, let's add the first set of drag and drop functionality. The first way is going to up. So we need a drag and drop context. What that means is that we need a context, a boundary defined for our drag and drop. We need a boundary defined for it. Okay, so for that to work, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be using our drag drop context that we've imported from react-beautiful-dnd, and we're going to be making use of it right now. So I'm going to collapse this container div right here, then I'm going to do drag drop context, right? I'm going to cut the ending tag out, and I'm going to paste it. So your container should be within the drag drop context. It should be within the drag drop context component from react-beautiful-dnd. The reason why this is complaining is because it's expecting us to add some functions right here. So there are 3 functions that can be added here, but there's only one that is required. So you can say, there's on drag end, right? I'll just create an arrow function here, right? There is on drag start, right? This is when you want to you want to do something when dragging starts, right? And then there's on drag update. Okay, these are the 3 possible functions that can be added here, but only one is required, and the only one that is required is on drag end. Every time you are using the drag drop context, you must add the on drag end property, and it's receiving all these properties are receiving functions. So for us to undo the functions well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function and say undo drag end. So I'm going to say undo drag end is going to be, I'm going to put result here. It's going to be any, it's going to be an arrow function. All right, so I'm going to say undo drag end. I'm going to put that here. All right, so that we can write our logic here. All right, with that done, the next thing I want to do is to start adding the droppable. The droppable, and then the what do you call it? I'm going to do the droppable, and then we are going to start seeing how we can drag and drop. Okay, so I'm not going to pass in anything here yet. We don't necessarily need anything here. This is the only required one. All right, so for us to add the droppable, we are going to go into our column component. In our column component, what we want to do, this is where we put our droppable, right? Because that means that let me just reload this. That means that we want to be able to drag something from this column and drop it on this column. So we have to make this column a droppable area, right? All right, so let's go into our column components and let's fire this up. All right, now remember the droppable we are using, it's not I'm going to cut this out from here. I'm going to paste it in our column component. All right, so the droppable we are using is not the proper droppable from react-beautiful-dnd. It's because there's a little bug from react-beautiful-dnd that does not work perfectly with React 18, right? And then we've written a snippet here that can make it work. All right, so we are importing from our own droppable snippet. All right, so with that done, what we're going to do here is we are going to make the droppable in the column box, right? And we're going to do droppable strict. Of course, I'm going to cut that and paste it here. So now droppable is expecting a function as a child. Any child element you are going to be putting in droppable is expecting a function. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a function here, like a simple function, but this function is not an arrow function. It's a function starting with curly braces and ending with curly braces. It's starting with parentheses and ending with parentheses here. All right, so that's how this particular function is working. That's the way it's going to be able to use the powerful functionality of React DOM to be able to render what do we call it? To be able to render our HTML and CSS. All right, so then we can also automatically destructure a particular property in droppable here, which is called provided, and there's also something called snapshots. So this provided can be any here, snapshots can also be any. All right, now the next thing we want to do here is droppable also have some properties that it takes. Okay, so it takes in something called droppable droppable ID, and the droppable ID here is going to be our column ID. All right, so I'm going to put ID here. Remember, we are bringing in ID from the top. All right, so with that done, then there's another thing it takes. It takes some other components, but for now let's limit it to droppable ID. It takes some other component, some other properties, sorry. All right, now the last thing we want to do here is we want to also provide something here. We want to say provided. Okay, this is supposed to go into this place after the list. So we want to say provided dot provided dot placeholder. All right, that's the way it's supposed to work. So it looks like there's an issue here. All right, so let's look for what the issue is and then fix it. Okay, so basically what we want to do here is we want to do something here. Okay, this is supposed to go, I think it's supposed to go here actually. Okay, it's supposed to go here. There's still an error and I'm still trying to figure out what the error is. Anyway, for the task list, right, what we want to do here is we want to pass in a ref and want to say provided provided dot inner ref. All right, let me remove this any. I think it's causing some issue for me here. Okay, let me just put it there, provided dot inner ref, and then we're going to spread out the provided dot droppable props. Right now, so it's saying cannot find the name droppable strict. Do you mean droppable strict? Oh, I think that's why it's complaining. All right. So droppable ID. That's why it's not bringing the proper information for me. All right. I'm wondering why it's not showing the proper information. All right. Why is it saying? Okay, it's saying type string or number is not assignable to type string. So let's go back to the interface. For column, let's make the ID string. The ID of task 2, let's make it string. All right. So with this, we've been able to add the droppable. We've been able to make our droppable, our column droppable, right? So it means that I can drag something from here and drop it here, right? Now, since our task list, remember the only thing we are making a droppable area within our column is the task list, not the whole column itself, because the droppable is wrapping the task list, right? We are wrapping the task list with the droppable. So it means that we can only drop something on the task list, not the whole column itself. All right. And this whole area, this whole column, these 3 columns is a place where we can drag and drop stuff. Now, let's quickly go to our tasks and then import draggable here. So from react-beautiful-dnd, we're going to import draggable. All right, so now we're going to wrap our task item with draggable. All right, so I'm going to do something like draggable. So draggable, like droppable, is also expecting a function to render its children. All right, so which is why we are going to be doing this right here. Remember, this kind of function is the one that starts with parentheses and ends with parentheses. Okay, all right, and then with that done, this also provides provided and snapshot. All right, and that means that we can, it means that we can do something like provided, we can do something like this. All right, now there's a couple of things. Droppable expects some what do you call it, I'm sorry, draggable expects some properties. So something like draggable ID supposed to be the ID of the task, and then it expects index, right? Now we need to pass in index into this particular task component. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to go to iTask and we are going to add index to the interface, right? It's going to be a number, and then we are going to be able to go to column, and remember that we are using map here and the index is available, so we can pass index this way, right? And with that done, we can then make use of our index here. We can destructure it, right, and pass in our index to the draggable. All right, that way it's not going to complain anymore. All right, so with that done, another thing we need to do here is very important, which is very important, is to add some properties to this div. The first thing we are going to do basically is to provide a reference. We're going to say, sorry, ref. We're going to say provided react.innerref. All right, and then secondly, we are going to spread out the provided draggable drops. So draggable props. All right, these two things are very important for draggable, and they are also very important for droppable. All right, both of them. It's very important. Okay. All right. So with these things done, now we can then go to our web page and try to drag this thing out. Let's see if it's draggable. So it's not currently draggable. Why that is the case, I can't figure out here. I think we've made a mistake somewhere. So let's look at this very well. All right, so there's a draggable ID, which is the ID of the task. There's also an index provided. All right, and then also the provided draggable props. I think this needs to come before, right? And then also I don't think there's anything else we have to do in this particular one. Then let's look at the column again. Let's look at the column just to be sure we are not doing something wrong. Okay, so there's droppable ID. That's the one we need for now. We don't need any other property for now, actually. So there's a droppable ID, right? And if I remove this guy here, it's not supposed to complain. So there's provided.innerref and all of that. Okay. After types.map, there's provided a placeholder. All right. Let's reload this and let's try to drag again. So there's something wrong here, and what we'll have to do is to figure out what is wrong, and then we can come back in another part of the video of this series to talk about it and discuss why it is wrong and why it is not currently working. So but everything we need has been done right here, so we don't need any other thing. This is supposed to be draggable right now. Like we're supposed to be able to drag it. Oh, okay, there's a possibility that react-beautiful-dnd is saying unable to find any drag handles. Oh, I remember we are supposed to add another property here, which is called the provided dot drag handle props. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So we're supposed to add this property on our draggable. That's in our task.tsx. That's our task component. All right, we're supposed to do that. And with that done, we're supposed to be able to drag this. Can you see this now? Now we're dragging this. So I can drag this. Now, the reason why it's not dropping anywhere else is because we've not written the logic for it to drop somewhere. All right, but now we can drag. Okay, and I can drag and kind of reorder here, but it's not going to reorder. All right, so I notice when I'm dragging, I can see through the task, right? That's one thing I don't want to see through. So what I want to do here is I want to go to my public CSS and custom.css file, and for the task item, I'm going to give it a background color of white, FFF. All right, so that way I'm not going to be able to see through the task when I'm dragging. All right, now with that done, we are almost close to actually fixing this drag and drop thing, right? So the part 4 of this video, of this series, we will write the logic that will make us drag from here and drop here, right? And vice versa. And then we can explore some other properties on our draggable and droppable context. As a matter of fact, we can even drag and reorder these columns and reorder this this task. So the first thing we are going to do is to be able to reorder the task within the list, right? And then we are going to also do the one we are going to be able to take out the task from the list and put it on another column. All right, so till we see in the next part of this series. Thank you.